Choose someone worthy of this family.
Then I choose him.
Don't choose me to fight him. Choose what you can respect when no one is watching.
That's why I chose you.
Jordan Blackwell had never started his mornings anywhere near a penthouse. His alarm buzzed at 4:37 a.m. On a cracked nightstand beside unpaid bills, a half-empty bottle of cough syrup, and the old truck key he always kept within reach. He opened his eyes before the second vibration. Men like Jordan did not ease into the day. They got up because a child depended on them. Across the small bedroom, Lila slept under a faded blue blanket, one hand tucked under her cheek, her braids loose from the night before. Jordan moved quietly through the apartment, packing 2 sandwiches, sliced apples, and a small note into her lunchbox. His maintenance uniform hung over a chair, clean but worn thin at the elbows. He buttoned it with care, smoothing the faded name patch as if dignity could be pressed back in a fabric by hand. "Time to move, baby girl," he whispered, kissing Lila's forehead. She blinked awake and reached for him before she reached for the blanket. That was enough to remind him why he kept going. By the time they reached Granite Media's lower entrance, Manhattan had begun lifting itself into morning, all glass, steel, and people pretending not to be tired. Jordan pushed his maintenance cart through the service corridor while Lila walked beside him, her backpack on one shoulder and her drawing folder held tight against her chest. The building smelled like polish, coffee, and money. Even the silence felt expensive. A security guard glanced at Jordan's uniform, then at the child, then back at the uniform. It was not a question, not officially, just the kind of look Jordan had been answering his whole life without opening his mouth. Lila noticed. Children always noticed what adults thought they hid well. "Daddy," she whispered, "why does he look at you like that?" Jordan kept his voice low. "Some people need time to learn what they are seeing." "Are you mad?" "No, what?" He looked down at her, calm enough not to pass the wound on. "Because being mad does not help me get you to school." Near the executive elevator, a coffee cup had tipped over, spilling dark liquid across the marble. 2 men in tailored suits stepped around it. One muttered something about maintenance under his breath. Jordan had already stopped. He set the brake on the cart, took a rag from the side pocket, and knelt without complaint. No sai, no performance. Just a problem in front of him and a child watching how a man handled being unseen. That was when the elevator doors opened. Rose Whitaker stepped out with a phone in one hand and a leather folder in the other, a beautiful white woman in a pale coat sharp enough to look like armor. People shifted when she entered, not because she asked them to, but because money had trained them to recognize her last name before her face. She was Edward Whitaker's only daughter, the woman investors called brilliant and difficult in the same breath, the kind of woman whose smile appeared in magazines but rarely reached her eyes. Jordan did not know all of that. He only knew she stopped. Her gaze moved from the spill to his hands, then to Lila standing beside the cart. Jordan finished wiping the floor before he looked up. "Morning, ma'am," he said. His tone held respect, not surrender. The guard straightened. "Miss Whitaker, I can have someone else handle that." Jordan kept folding the rag. "It is handled." The words were quiet, but they landed. One of the suited men laughed softly. "Good. Maybe now the lobby can look like a lobby." Lila's fingers tightened around her folder. Jordan noticed without looking at her. He placed the used rag into a separate bin and rested one steady hand near his daughter's shoulder. He did not answer the man. That was not weakness. It was discipline. Rose watched him longer than she meant to. Most people in her world either performed outrage or swallowed humiliation with visible shame. Jordan did neither. He simply refused to let someone else decide the size of him. For a moment, the lobby seemed to hold its breath around something no one wanted to name. Class, race, money, the line between the people who owned the building and the people who kept it standing. Jordan reached for his old toolbox beneath the cart, checking the latch before moving on. A scratched watch slipped from under his sleeve, its leather band carefully repaired. Rose noticed it. Then Lila's drawing folder shifted, and one corner of paper slid loose, showing 3 crayon figures beneath a crooked yellow sun. Jordan tucked it back before anyone could see more. But Rose caught one detail that did not belong in an ordinary child's drawing. The tallest figure wore a red dress. The elevator chimed again. Jordan guided Lila toward the service corridor, but the little girl looked back at Rose with those wide, unguarded eyes and whispered something so soft the lobby almost missed it. Rose did not. Rose Whitaker heard the whisper clearly. "Daddy," Lila said, still looking at the woman in the pale coat. "Why does she look like nobody hugs her?" The lobby did not fall silent all at once. It tightened in pieces. The guard looked down at his monitor. One suited man stopped smiling. Jordan Blackwell closed his eyes for half a breath, not from anger, but from the quiet panic of a father who knew children could tell the truth before the world was ready to hear it. He crouched beside Lila, ignoring the marble, the expensive shoes, and the watching eyes. "Baby girl, we do not speak on people like that." Lila's face folded with confusion. "I was not being mean. I know." His voice stayed low. "But some truths still need kindness around them." Rose stood near the elevator doors, phone still in her hand. Powerful women were used to being called cold, brilliant, difficult, untouchable. No one had ever looked at her across a corporate lobby and seen the absence underneath all that polish. Jordan rose and faced her. "I apologize, Mom." She meant no disrespect. He did not beg. He did not shrink. He simply held the embarrassment without handing it to his child. Rose should have stepped into the elevator and let the morning close behind her. Instead, she said, "Children notice things." Jordan studied her just long enough to make sure there was no punishment hidden inside the sentence. "They do," he answered. "That is why I try to give mine something decent to notice." Behind Rose, the elevator chimed again, impatient as a command. The board was waiting upstairs. Her father had already called twice. But down here, a poor black single father stood beside a maintenance cart, teaching his daughter that dignity did not need an audience. Then the lobby doors turned, and a woman in a gray coat hurried in with a laptop bag, a phone, and a tray of coffees tipping dangerously in one hand. One cup slipped. Before the suited men moved, Jordan reached out and steadied the tray. "Careful," he said. He handed her a clean napkin and stepped back before gratitude could become attention. It was small, too small for a speech, but Rose watched it like evidence. In her world, kindness usually came with leverage. Jordan's had no hook in it. The guard cleared his throat. "Miss Whitaker, your father called again." At the mention of Edward, Rose's face returned to discipline so quickly that anyone else might have missed the lonely softness vanish. Jordan did not. He simply looked away. Lila shifted her drawing folder under her arm, and one folded sheet slid free, landing face up on the marble. Rose was closest. She picked it up before Jordan could reach it. 3 crayon figures stood beneath a crooked yellow sun. Jordan in a blue shirt, Lila with braids and a purple smile, and beside them, a taller white woman in a red dress, close enough that all 3 hands touched. At the top, in uneven letters, Lila had written, "Miss Rose." Rose stared longer than she should have. Jordan extended his hand gently, protective but not ashamed. "That is just one of her drawings." Rose looked at Lila. "You drew me?" Lila nodded, shy now. "You were standing by yourself." The words reached deeper than the drawing. Rose handed it back carefully. Jordan folded it once and slipped it into the side pocket of his toolbox, as if placing something fragile behind glass. "We should go," he told Lila. "School does not wait for us." Lila took his hand, and they disappeared into the service corridor. Rose remained by the elevator, staring at the empty space they left behind. Her phone buzzed again. "Father." For the first time that morning, the call felt less like duty and more like a cage. When the elevator doors opened, Rose still had not moved, and the question followed her upstairs before she did. Rose Whitaker spent the board meeting hearing Lila's voice instead of the men around the table. Revenue numbers moved across the screen. Executives spoke about growth, risk, succession, and market confidence. Someone said legacy twice, as if the word could make loneliness sound profitable. Rose sat at the head of the table with her hands folded over a leather folder, her face composed enough to satisfy every person watching her. But inside, one sentence kept returning. You were standing by yourself. She had been surrounded all her life. Assistants, lawyers, board members, drivers. Men with polished shoes who wanted access to her father and called it admiration. But surrounded was not the same as accompanied. Miss Whitaker, the chief financial officer, asked. Rose looked up. She had missed a question. That almost never happened. Repeat it, she said, without apology. He did. She answered in 3 clean sentences, precise enough to remind the room why they still needed her. When the meeting ended, she remained by the window, staring down at Manhattan, shining beneath late morning sun. Her phone buzzed. Father. She answered on the second ring. I am in meetings. Edward Whitaker's voice came smooth and final. Then leave one. Lunch. Private dining room. 12:30. The call ended before she could refuse. By the time Rose entered the 42nd floor dining room, Edward was already seated, silver hair combed back, charcoal suit perfect, sparkling water untouched. He checked his watch, though. She was not late. You look tired. Rose sat across from him. You brought me here to say that efficiently? The board is getting nervous. The board is always nervous. They want continuity. Rose went still. There it was. Marriage dressed as governance. Edward slid a cream envelope across the table. 3 names. She did not touch it. Candidates. Men who understand responsibility. You mean men who understand your balance sheets. His eyes cooled. Men who would not turn your life into charity work. Rose looked at him sharply. What is that supposed to mean? Edward leaned back. Security mentioned you spent several minutes this morning watching maintenance staff. He paused. A black man with a child. Rose felt something inside her harden. His name is Jordan Blackwell. Edward's expression changed just enough to show he disliked that she knew it. Men like that survive life. They do not build it. Rose looked toward the window before anger could speak for her. Down near the service entrance across the street, Jordan stood beside his old blue pickup, helping Lila climb carefully into the passenger seat. From that height, he should have looked small. He did not. He adjusted her coat collar, listened while she talked, then noticed a doorman struggling with 2 delivery boxes. People in expensive coats stepped around the man. Jordan crossed the curb, took the top box, steadied him, carried both packages to the entrance, and returned to his truck as if nothing worth mentioning had happened. Rose watched longer than she meant to. Edward followed her gaze. Where she saw character, he saw an unapproved variable. Invite him, Edward said suddenly. Rose turned. What? The foundation gala is Friday. Invite Mr. Blackwell and his daughter. He is not a candidate. Then he should have nothing to fear. The words were calm, but the blade inside them was clear. Below, Jordan paused before getting into the truck, almost as if he felt eyes on him from above. Rose held her breath. Then he drove away with Lila beside him, leaving the curb empty and the question behind. Rose looked at the envelope, then at her father, and understood that Edward Whitaker had not just noticed Jordan Blackwell. He had marked him. And Friday night, under chandeliers and judgment, the quiet black single father would walk into a room designed to prove he did not belong. Friday night arrived, wearing diamonds and judgment. The Grand Meridian Ballroom glittered with chandeliers, marble, cameras, and quiet money. Rose Whitaker stood near the staircase in a black evening dress, beautiful enough to make people turn, guarded enough to make them look away first. Across the room, Edward Whitaker spoke with the 3 men from the envelope, Jonathan Vale, Preston Cole, and Daniel Mercer. They were not guests. They were options. Rose understood the staging at once, and the music felt colder. Then her assistant leaned close. Mr. Blackwell is here. Rose looked toward the entrance. Jordan Blackwell stood just inside with Lila's hand in his. His charcoal suit was clean, pressed, and not new. Lila wore a cream dress and held her drawing folder tight against her chest. Jordan took in the room once, not with fear, not with hunger, but with the calm assessment of a father checking whether his child was safe. Conversations thinned. A woman near the doorway whispered, "Is he staff?" Jordan heard it. Rose saw that he heard it. His face did not change. He only bent toward Lila. "Stay close, baby girl." Lila looked up at the chandeliers. "Daddy, it looks like a castle. Just a fancy room with better lights," he said. Rose almost smiled. Jonathan appeared beside her, smooth and curious. "That is the maintenance worker your father mentioned?" His name is Jordan Blackwell, Rose said. Interesting guest. It is a foundation gala. We invite people, usually donors. Rose looked at him coolly. Sometimes people with less money understand charity better than donors do. Across the ballroom, a young server struggled with a folding table whose leg had jammed beneath the linen. Guests stepped back to protect their shoes. Jordan handed Lila her water and crossed over. Mind if I take a look? The server nodded, embarrassed. Jordan crouched, fixed the lock under the hinge in seconds, and stepped away before anyone could thank him loudly. In a room built on speeches about helping people, the only man moving without applause was the one the room had almost mistaken for staff. Lila saw Rose and called, "Miss Rose." The child's voice carried too far. Jordan went still for half a breath. But Rose crossed the marble floor anyway. Every eye followed. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, warm but not theatrical. Lila lifted her folder. "I brought my pictures." Then, "I am honored." Edward arrived before the moment could grow too human. "Mr. Blackwell, Mr. Whitaker, your father keeps you close," Edward said to Lila. Jordan answered gently, "That is my job." Jonathan extended a hand. "What line of work are you in, Mr. Blackwell?" He knew. They all knew. Jordan shook his hand once. "Maintenance." Preston chuckled. "Useful trade." "It is," Jordan said. "Buildings fall apart when people only admire the top floors." The silence that followed was small and sharp. Then the foundation screen behind the podium flickered and went black. Staff rushed near the side stage. Edward's jaw tightened. "Fix it." An assistant paled. Jordan looked at the screen, then at Lila. "Stay with Miss Rose for 1 minute." Rose straightened. "I have her." A technician tried to block him, but Jordan pointed to the cables. "Your signal is looping through the dead receiver." Edward watched, then said, "Let him." Jordan rolled up one sleeve, changed 2 connections, reset the path, and the screen came alive with the Whitaker Foundation logo. Applause rose from people who did not understand what they were applauding. Jordan stepped back and gave the technician room. "You are good now." He returned to Lila before the spotlight could touch him. Edward saw that restraint. So did Rose. Minutes later, Edward stood at the podium, the restored screen glowing behind him. He spoke about legacy, responsibility, and wise choices. Then he turned toward his daughter. "And soon, Rose will make one." Applause filled the ballroom. Rose went still beneath it. Across the room, Lila slipped her hand into Jordan's. Jordan did not know the whole story yet, but he knew what pressure looked like when it was placed on someone in public. Rose was surrounded by wealth, cameras, and approval. Somehow, she looked completely alone. After Edward Whitaker's announcement, the applause felt less like celebration and more like a door closing. Rose stood beneath the chandeliers with her face perfectly still while cameras waited for the obedient smile of a daughter trained never to embarrass her father. She gave him one. It cost her more than anyone knew. Across the ballroom, Jordan Blackwell saw the moment pass through her like cold weather. He did not know the envelope of approved men. He did not know the private threats dressed as family duty. But he knew what it looked like when someone was cornered and expected to call it honor. Lila held his hand tighter. "Daddy," she whispered, "why is everybody clapping if she looks scared?" Jordan looked at Rose, then down at his daughter. Sometimes people clap because they do not know what else to do. He did not go to Rose in front of the cameras. Help, given at the wrong moment, could become another kind of exposure. So he waited. When the speech ended and donors drifted back toward champagne, Jordan guided Lila away from the chandeliers and into the service corridor below the ballroom. The maintenance level smelled of floor cleaner, warm machinery, and honest work. Down there, no one pretended the building carried itself. Jordan set Lila's water cup on a metal counter and knelt to fix the ribbon slipping from her braid. "You did good tonight," he said, even when people stared, especially then. Lila opened her drawing folder and began straightening the pages with serious little hands. A few minutes later, heels clicked at the far end of the corridor. Rose appeared in a long coat over her black dress, her perfect hair slightly loosened, her guarded face tired in a way the ballroom had not been allowed to see. "I thought you left," she said. "We were about to." His voice stayed respectful, but there was a line in it. Rose heard it. I wanted to thank you for the screen. Jordan picked up his toolbox. The technician had it mostly handled. That is not what happened. It is what should be remembered. Rose paused. In her world, men fought for credit over things they had barely touched. Jordan had saved the presentation and was already giving the moment back. Lila looked up. My daddy fixes things fast. Baby girl, Jordan warned softly. It is true. Rose almost smiled. Then her eyes moved around the corridor, the carts, the stacked chairs, the staff passing unseen beneath the gala. You are comfortable down here. Jordan's gaze stayed calm. I am familiar down here. That is not the same thing. The sentence landed quietly. Lila suddenly held out a drawing. Jordan reached too late, but he did not snatch it away. Rose accepted the page. It showed the ballroom, the black screen, Jordan beside Lila, and Rose on stage with no mouth drawn on her face. Why did you not draw me smiling? Rose asked. Lila's voice became small. Because you were not. Jordan touched her shoulder. Lila. Rose lifted one hand, stopping the apology before it came. No, she is right. For a moment, Rose Whitaker looked less like a billionaire's daughter and more like someone who had forgotten what her own face revealed when she stopped performing. Jordan saw it and chose not to use it. We should let you get back, he said. Rose did not move. My father embarrassed me tonight. Jordan considered the words. He put pressure on you. That is different. Is it? Embarrassment passes. Pressure tells you what somebody wants to control. Before she could answer, the service elevator opened. Edward's assistant stepped out with a cream envelope. Miss Whitaker, your father asked me to deliver this before Mr. Blackwell leaves. Rose read the message, and her face hardened. Jordan waited. My father would like you and Lila to come to dinner at the estate tomorrow night, she said. Lila's eyes widened. Jordan looked at the envelope, then at the closing elevator doors. He understood. This was not gratitude. This was a test with silverware. Rose's voice dropped. You do not have to accept. Jordan glanced at his daughter, then back at Rose. When powerful men invite you to be judged, refusing only lets them write the verdict without you in the room. He folded the envelope once and placed it beside his old toolbox. He said nothing more, but Rose already understood the answer. The next evening, Jordan Blackwell parked his old blue pickup outside the Whitaker estate and kept both hands on the steering wheel for one extra breath. Beyond the iron gates, the mansion rose over the Hudson like a house built to remind people where they stood. Lila leaned forward in her cream sweater, drawing folder pressed to her chest. Daddy, do people really sleep in houses this big? Jordan looked at the tall windows glowing above the stone driveway. Some do. Would you want to? He turned off the engine. A big house does not mean a full house, baby girl. She thought about that with the serious face she used for grown-up sadness. Then why make it so big? Jordan opened his door before the answer became too heavy. Sometimes people build walls before they know they're lonely. At the front steps, he fixed her coat collar and lowered his voice. Remember what matters. Please and thank you, Lila said. No touching fancy things. And she looked up. Do not let people make me feel small. Jordan nodded. That one most of all. A house manager greeted them with a polished smile that paused at Jordan's old shoes and the truck behind him. Jordan noticed. He only nodded. Good evening. Inside, the estate smelled of cedar, candles, and money old enough to seem natural. Staff moved along the walls with silent precision. Rose appeared near the staircase in a deep green dress, elegant but less armored than she had been at the gala. When Lila saw her, she smiled. Miss Rose. Rose softened before she could stop it. Thought far. Then Edward Whitaker entered from the study with a glass of bourbon and the posture of a man who expected every room to rearrange itself around him. Mr. Blackwell. Mr. Whitaker. Dinner was served at a table long enough to make conversation feel like negotiation. Lila studied the silverware with visible concern. Jordan quietly moved the right fork closer to her plate without making a lesson of it. Edward noticed. First time dining in a room like this? Jordan lifted his water. First time in this room, yes. Rose lowered her eyes to hide the smallest smile. Edward cut into his steak. Rose tells me you work maintenance at Granite Media. Yes, sir. And before that. School district facilities. Private repair work. Night contracts when I could get them. A flexible résumé. Jordan set his fork down softly. A working one. The silence was small, but sharp. Edward leaned back. And raising your daughter alone must be difficult. Jordan's eyes flicked to Lila. Some days are harder than others. Her mother, Rose, stiffened. Father. Jordan's hand moved near Lila's, close enough to steady her. That is not a dinner question. No angue. No chum. Just a line drawn cleanly across polished wood. Edward studied it. Fair enough. But it was not fair, and everyone knew it. Later, Edward asked, "Will you tell your daughter success is?" Jordan waited, but Lila answered first. Sleeping good. Edward blinked. Sleeping good. Daddy says if you can sleep and not feel bad about how you treated people, you did not lose yourself that day. The room changed. Jordan lowered his eyes, almost embarrassed by the intimacy of his lesson being placed under chandelier light. Rose looked at Lila with dangerous tenderness. Edward stared as if the child had set a mirror on the table. Dessert came on gold-rimmed plates. Lila barely touched hers. She studied the portraits on the walls. Are all those people family? Edward said yes. They look strict. Jordan coughed once into his napkin. Rose almost laughed. Then Lila pulled a folded drawing from her folder before Jordan could stop her. Four figures stood beneath a crooked yellow sun. Jordan, Lila, Rose in green, and Edward standing apart near the giant house. At the top, in uneven purple crayon, she had written, "People look happier when Miss Rose is not alone." Rose's breath caught. Edward's face shifted, not much, but enough. Jordan reached for the paper carefully. That was kind, baby girl. But some things we give people only when they are ready to hold them. Lila looked worried. Did I do wrong? No, Rose said softly. You did not. Edward set down his glass. Leave the drawing, he said. Jordan looked at him. So did Rose. Edward kept his eyes on the folded paper. Please. It was the first time that night the words sounded real. Jordan placed the drawing beside the untouched bourbon. As he helped Lila with her coat, Edward no longer looked at the old suit or the worn shoes. He looked at the space beside Rose in the drawing, the place where his daughter was not alone. And for the first time all evening, the billionaire had no answer ready. Jordan Blackwell did not speak until he and Lila were outside beneath the cold Hudson night. The Whitaker estate glowed behind them, every window warm, every stone polished, every shadow shaped by money. His old blue pickup waited between two black luxury cars, plain enough to look almost stubborn. Lila climbed into the passenger seat with her drawing folder on her lap. Daddy, she asked softly, did I make Mr. Edwards sad? Jordan paused with one hand on the doorframe. I think you made him think. Is that bad? He looked back at the mansion, then at her worried face. Not if he is brave enough to keep thinking. She accepted that because it came from him. Jordan closed the door gently and stood beside the truck for a moment, letting the weight of the dinner move through him without letting it settle. He had been judged before by employers, landlords, strangers, men in suits who thought a uniform told the whole story. But Edward Whitaker had not only judged him, he had studied him. That was different. Mr. Blackwell. Rose's voice came from the stone steps behind him. Jordan turned. She stood beneath the porch light in a dark coat over her green dress, arms folded against the cold and something deeper. Without the table, the staff, and her father's questions around her, she looked less untouchable, more tired. Miss Whitaker, I am sorry about dinner. Dinner was fine. Her mouth almost curved. That is generous. No, that is polite. The honesty surprised a small breath out of her. She came down one step, then stopped, careful not to close the distance too quickly. My father was testing you. I know, and you still came. Jordan glanced through the windshield at Lila, tracing a crooked sun into the fogged glass. Your father would have formed an opinion either way. I prefer to be present for the one about me. Rose lowered her eyes. Most people tried to impress Edward. Jordan had only refused to disappear. Do you want something from him? She asked. Jordan's gaze stayed on his daughter. What I want is already in that truck. The answer was simple and complete. Rose looked at Lila, then back at the house. He should not have asked about her mother. Something in Jordan closed gently, without anger. No, he should not have. I should have stopped him sooner. You did stop him. Not soon enough. Jordan watched the guilt touch her face. He could have used it. Some men would have. But he did not step through openings made by pain. Miss Whitaker, your father's choices are not yours unless you protect them. Rose looked up quickly. Do you think I protect them? I think you have survived them. The words took the air out of her. For a moment, only the river moved beyond the estate wall. Then her phone buzzed inside her coat. She looked at the screen. Father. Jordan did not lean in. He gave her the dignity of deciding alone. Rose declined the call. Her hand trembled once afterward. Jordan saw it, then looked toward the river instead. That mercy nearly broke her. He will not like that, she said. Powerful men usually dislike silence when they did not order it. A small laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Jordan's mouth softened, but he did not claim the moment. He only checked Lila again. I should get her home. Rose nodded. Of course. He walked to the driver's side, then paused. Miss Whitaker. Yes. Do not let a room full of people make your choice before you know what your choice is. Rose went still. The sentence did not rescue her. It reminded her she still existed before anyone else's plan. Good night, Mr. Blackwell. Good night, Miss Whitaker. The old truck pulled down the driveway. Lila lifted one sleepy hand through the window, and Rose lifted hers back. From a study above, Edward Whitaker watched the taillights disappear. He had seen the decline call. He had seen his daughter laugh. He had seen Jordan leave without asking for anything. On his desk lay Lila's folded drawing, the purple words visible under the lamp. People look happier when Miss Rose is not alone. Edward stared at it, then picked up the house phone. I want everything we have on Jordan Blackwell before morning. Outside, Rose still stood beneath the porch light, unaware that the next test had already begun. By morning, the Whitaker estate felt like another planet. Queens woke under thin gray rain, school traffic crawling past wet curbs and impatient horns. Jordan Blackwell parked his old blue pickup outside Lila's elementary school and turned off the engine with the same care he gave everything near his daughter. Lila sat beside him in her yellow raincoat, drawing folder on her lap, inhaler tucked in her pocket because Jordan had checked twice. You got everything? He asked. Lunchbox, homework, folder, breathing medicine. He fixed the top button of her coat. And what do we do when people are unkind? Lila sighed like she had heard it forever. We do not become them. That is my girl. Across the street, Rose Whitaker sat in the back of a black SUV with a foundation briefing folder open on her lap, pretending she had not looked up the moment Jordan's truck arrived. The school visit had been scheduled for weeks, part of the Whitaker Foundation literacy grant. That was the official reason. The unofficial reason was harder to name. She had barely slept after declining her father's call, after Jordan's words followed her home like quiet weather. Her driver opened the door, and Rose stepped out under a black umbrella, cream coat buttoned tight, face composed for the principal waiting near the entrance. Miss Whitaker, we are honored, he said. I am here to observe, not interrupt. Then Lila saw her. Miss Rose. Parents turned. A man near a silver SUV looked from Rose to Jordan's old truck and smiled just enough to insult without speaking. Jordan noticed. Rose noticed him noticing. Good morning, Lila, Rose said, careful not to make warmth into a performance. Jordan stood with one hand near his daughter's shoulder. Morning, Miss Whitaker. Mr. Blackwell. The principal's eyes moved between them. You two know each other? Rose answered first. Yes. One word. Clean. Enough. Inside, the hallway smelled of wet coats, pencil shavings, and cafeteria toast. A janitor pushed a mop bucket along the far wall, invisible to almost everyone. Jordan nodded to him. The man nodded back, surprised to be seen. Lila copied her father with solemn pride. Rose caught it. At Lila's locker, a boy brushed past too hard and knocked her folder loose. Drawings scattered across the damp floor. He looked back, saw Jordan's uniform beneath the old coat, and mumbled, sorry. Didn't see her without bending. Jordan knelt calmly. Accidents happen, he said, handing Lila one drawing, then another. But when you knock something down, you help pick it up. The boy flushed, then bent and gathered 2 pages. "Sorry," he said again, this time to Lila. Jordan nodded. "Appreciated." Lila blinked hard. He stepped on the sun. Jordan looked at the smudged yellow corner. "Then we will draw another one. It will not be the same." "No, it might be stronger where it got hurt." Rose looked away before anyone saw what the sentence did to her. In the classroom, Jordan stayed only long enough to make sure Lila settled. When the teacher reminded him parents could not remain, he stepped back without argument and lifted 2 fingers toward Lila. "I am here." On his way out, he fixed a jammed printer tray for the secretary in seconds and moved on before gratitude became attention. The principal leaned toward Rose with an awkward smile. "He is quite handy. Maintenance, I believe." Rose looked at him, her voice quiet but firm. "He is Lila's father." Before the principal could answer, a sharp cough broke from the classroom. Then another. Lila stood beside her desk, one hand at her chest, eyes wide with fear. Jordan was already down the hall. Rose moved first because she was closest. She reached Lila, found the inhaler in her pocket, and crouched low. "Look at me, sweetheart. You are okay. I am right here." Lila's fingers shook as Rose helped her take the first puff. The teacher called for the nurse. Rose's voice changed, no longer donor-polished, only clear. "Get Mr. Blackwell. Now." Lila reached for her sleeve, breathing thinly, trusting her for one terrifying minute. And as Jordan's footsteps came fast down the hallway, Rose understood the weight of that trust. A child had needed her before the person who never made her wonder if he would come back reached the door. Jordan Blackwell reached the classroom door without running, but every part of him had already moved toward Lila. He took in the scene once. His daughter pale beside her desk, Rose Whitaker crouched in front of her, the inhaler in her hand, the teacher frightened, the principal uselessly whispering instructions into a phone. Jordan did not shout. He did not blame. He knelt beside Lila and placed one steady hand on her back. "Look at me, baby girl." Lila's eyes found him, wet with fear. "Daddy, I am here." Rose spoke quickly, controlled but shaken. 2 puffs, 1 minute apart. "The nurse is coming." Jordan looked at her once, not with suspicion, not with gratitude yet, just measuring whether his child had been cared for. "Thank you." Then he helped Lila take one more slow breath, counting softly until her shoulders stopped fighting the air. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Granite Media. A shift reminder, then a warning about being late. Jordan did not look at it. His job mattered. Rent mattered. But Lila's breathing came first. The nurse arrived and checked her, then said urgent care would be safest after an asthma episode that strong. Rose stood at once. "My car is outside." Jordan lifted Lila carefully, her drawing folder tucked under his arm. "My truck is outside." The answer was calm, but the boundary was clear. Rose heard it and did not argue. "Then I will follow." At the clinic, fluorescent lights made everyone look tired. Jordan sat with Lila against his chest while the doctor checked her lungs, asked about triggers, and handed him discharge papers with a prescription clipped to the front. Jordan listened to every word, asked about dosage, side effects, school precautions, and when to return. No panique, no performance, just a father building safety around his child one instruction at a time. Rose stood near the wall, coat still damp from the rain, phone buzzing again and again inside her hand. "Father." "Assistant." Board dinner moved up. Attendance expected. She silenced it, but not before Jordan saw the name on the screen. He looked away, giving her the privacy her world never seemed to allow. Lila woke briefly and saw Rose still there. "You stayed." Rose's face softened before she could guard it. "Yes." "You were scared." Rose swallowed. "A little." Lila's voice was sleepy. "Daddy gets scared too. He just does not let it drive." Jordan lowered his eyes, embarrassed by the truth of it being said out loud. The nurse returned with the prescription bag. Jordan checked the cost on the receipt, and his jaw tightened by almost nothing. Almost nothing was enough. Rose saw the math move across his face. Medicine, gas, missed hours, groceries, the quiet price of doing the right thing. She almost said, "I can pay for it." The words rose fast, rich and careless. Then she stopped. Helping him like that would make her feel better before it made his life better. Jordan noticed the offer she did not make, and something in his guarded expression eased by a fraction. Respect, not trust. Not yet. His phone buzzed again. This time he looked. A message from his supervisor. Report delay noted. Further issues will require review. He slid the phone back into his pocket and pulled Lila's blanket higher around her shoulders. Rose's phone lit up at the same moment. The car is waiting. Mr. Whitaker expects you now. Lila's fingers reached weakly and caught the edge of Rose's sleeve. Her eyes were already closing again. Do not leave yet, she whispered. Rose went still. Jordan looked from his daughter's hand to Rose's face, but he did not ask her to stay. That was what made the choice heavier. Outside, her father's car waited. Inside, a sick child held her sleeve like trust was something fragile enough to lose in one step. Rose looked down at Lila's hand, then at the dark phone in her palm, and for the first time all day, the command waiting outside felt smaller than the quiet request beside her. Rose Whitaker did not move when Lila whispered, "Do not leave yet." The words were small, almost lost beneath the clinic lights and the sound of nurses moving down the corridor, but they reached her harder than her father's calls. Lila slept against Jordan Blackwell's chest, breathing steadier now, one hand still curled around the edge of Rose's sleeve. There was no practical reason for Rose to stay. The board dinner was waiting. Edward Whitaker was waiting. The version of herself, trained to obey without looking wounded, was waiting. Jordan watched her quietly from the plastic chair, not asking, not turning his daughter's request into pressure. That made the choice heavier. Rose looked at her phone. The car is waiting. Mr. Whitaker expects you now. She turned the screen down on her knee. My father will use this, she said. Jordan's hand rested gently on Lila's back. Then he was going to use something. Rose gave a faint, tired smile. That is supposed to comfort me? No, ma'am. Just keep you from blaming the wrong thing. The answer settled between them. A nurse called Jordan to review discharge instructions. He glanced at Lila, calculating how to move without waking her. Rose stood. I can sit with her. Jordan studied her for half a second. The caution remained. If she wakes up scared, call me. I will. Not the nurse first. You first. Only then did he ease Lila into the chair, tuck the blanket around her, and place the inhaler and drawing folder within reach. Rose watched those small decisions like a language she had never learned. Jordan did not simply love his daughter. He prepared safety before fear arrived. When he returned with paperwork and a prescription bag, Rose saw the receipt before he turned it over. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Not panic. Math. Medicine, missed hours, gas, rent. She almost offered to pay. The words rose fast, rich and wrong. Then she stopped. Jordan saw the offer she chose not to make, and his guarded eyes softened by one careful degree. We are good, he said. Rose nodded. Good. Lila woke briefly, saw Rose beside her, and smiled through exhaustion. You stayed? Yes. You were scared. Rose swallowed. A little. Daddy gets scared too. He just does not let it drive. Jordan looked down, embarrassed by the truth being said aloud. Rose's phone buzzed again. This time she turned it off. Not silenced. Off. Jordan noticed. That may cost you, he said. Rose looked at Lila's hand resting against her coat. Everything with my father does. An hour later, outside the clinic, rain had softened into mist. Jordan buckled Lila into the old blue pickup, checked her breathing once more, then closed the door gently. Rose's black SUV waited behind them. The driver stepped forward. Miss Whitaker, your father moved the board dinner to the estate. He said you are to come directly. Rose's posture hardened. The driver hesitated, then looked at Jordan. He also said Mr. Blackwell should be informed that his presence at tomorrow's foundation ceremony is no longer necessary. Jordan's face stayed calm. Rose's eyes sharpened. He said that. Yes, ma'am. Jordan placed one hand on the truck door, steady as ever. Miss Whitaker, get home safe. No complaint. No anger. No wounded pride handed to her to fix. Rose stepped toward him. Jordan, it was the first time she used his first name. They both heard it. He only looked at her quietly. Your father is making his choice, he said. You still have to make yours. Then he drove away with Lila resting against the window, one small hand lifting goodbye. Rose stood in the mist beside the open SUV door, watching the old truck disappear. Tomorrow, her father would stand before cameras and speak about legacy again. But now she knew the man he had removed from the room had already changed the question she was supposed to answer. The next evening, the Whitaker Foundation ceremony returned to the Grand Meridian without Jordan Blackwell's name on the guest list. That absence felt louder to Rose than the cameras, the white roses, and the polished donors waiting beneath the lights. Edward stood near the stage with Jonathan Vale, Preston Cole, and Daniel Mercer arranged around him like proof that her future had already been narrowed to acceptable men. "You are late," Edward said when she approached. Rose looked at the clock. "I'm exactly on time. For guests, not for family." Preston glanced toward the entrance with a thin smile. "I assume the maintenance gentleman will not be joining us." Edward answered before Rose could. "No, tonight is for serious people." Rose's fingers tightened around her glass, but she said nothing. That was the mistake. A small one at first. The kind powerful rooms train people to make. Silence, dressed as composure. Across the city, Jordan sat in a small office at Granite Media with Lila beside him, her yellow folder on her lap and her inhaler in her pocket. His supervisor stood near the door. A human resources manager placed a paper on the desk. "Pending review, you are suspended from your next shifts." Jordan looked at the page once. "For what reason?" "Conduct concerns related to recent Foundation events." Lila's eyes moved from the paper to her father. "Daddy." Jordan kept his voice even. "It is okay, baby girl. But you helped them." The room went still because the child had said the part no adult wanted to touch. Jordan rested one hand near her shoulder. Helping does not always stop people from judging. The HR manager looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Blackwell, if you sign this acknowledgement, the process can remain quiet." Jordan did not pick up the pen. Quiet for who? Back at the ceremony, Edward stepped to the microphone and spoke about responsibility, legacy, and wise choices. Then he turned toward Rose. "My daughter understands that personal decisions must serve something larger than temporary feeling." The room applauded. Rose felt every clap like a hand pressing her back into the life she had been trying to leave. Her phone buzzed. A message from Jordan appeared, simple and careful. "Lila wanted you to know she is breathing better. She also said thank you for not leaving." Rose stared at it, throat tightening. He had not asked for help. He had not mentioned the ceremony. He had not told her he was being punished. That made it worse. At Granite, the HR manager slid the pen closer. "This is only administrative." Jordan stood slowly. "No, ma'am. Administrative is when a building needs paperwork. This is a man being asked to act ashamed so someone else can feel clean." He took Lila's hand and left without signing. In the hallway, Lila looked up at him with tears she was trying hard not to spend. "Did we do something wrong?" Jordan knelt in front of her, his own fear locked behind steady eyes. "No, and that is why we are walking out straight." At the Grand Meridian, Rose finally stepped away from the ballroom and into the service corridor, breathing like she had been underwater. Her assistant hurried after her, pale. "Miss Whitaker, I think you need to see this." She held out a tablet. On the screen was an internal email thread from Edward's office to Granite Media leadership. "Remove Blackwell from Foundation access. Review employment exposure. Avoid public association." Rose read the words once. Then again. The truth had arrived, but too late to stop Jordan from being walked out in front of his daughter. Behind the ballroom doors, applause rose for her father's speech. Rose stood in the corridor with Jordan's message still glowing on her phone. And for the first time, she understood that her silence had not protected anyone. It had only given cruelty a cleaner room to work in. Rose Whitaker stood in the service corridor with the tablet in her hands while applause rolled behind the ballroom doors like nothing had happened. The email thread from Edward's office glowed under the fluorescent light. "Remove Blackwell from Foundation access. Review employment exposure. Avoid public association." The words were clean, corporate, bloodless. That made them worse. They did not sound like cruelty. They sounded like policy. Rose read them once more, then looked at Jordan's message on her phone. "Lila wanted you to know she is breathing better. She also said thank you for not leaving." He had been punished while thanking her. The shame of it moved through Rose slowly, not loud, not theatrical, but deep enough to change her breathing. Her assistant whispered, "Miss Whitaker, your father is about to introduce the private dinner announcement." Rose handed the tablet back. "Send that thread to the main screen." The assistant went pale. "What? Now?" "Your father will, yes," Rose said. "He will." She returned to the ballroom before fear could negotiate with her. Edward stood at the podium, smiling for donors, cameras, and the 3 approved men placed near the front row. "My daughter," he said, "understands that legacy requires wise choices." Rose walked straight toward the stage. The room shifted. Edward saw her face and stopped mid-sentence. "Rose." She took the second microphone from the stand. Her hands were steady because they had finally stopped trying to please him. "Before anyone speaks about wise choices," she said, "this foundation needs to correct a wrong one." A ripple moved through the guests. Edward's smile tightened. "Not here." Rose looked at him. "Especially here." Behind them, the main screen changed. The Whitaker logo disappeared. The email thread appeared in black and white for the whole room to read. "Remove Blackwell from Foundation access. Review employment exposure. Avoid public association." Silence fell so sharply that even the waiters stopped moving. Jonathan Vale looked down. Preston Cole's smile died. Edward turned toward the screen, then toward Rose, and for the first time that week, command did not immediately return to his face. Rose faced the room. "Jordan Blackwell was invited to this Foundation's events. He helped when our staff needed help. He protected his daughter. He harmed no one. And because his presence made powerful people uncomfortable, pressure was placed on his workplace." Her voice stayed low. That made every word carry farther. That was not discretion. That was cowardice with better stationery. Edward stepped closer. "Enough." Rose did not move. "No." The word was quiet, but the room remembered it. "I am formally requesting an external review of every communication sent from this office to Granite Media regarding Mr. Blackwell. I am also suspending tonight's private dinner announcement. No candidate, no donor, and no father will use this foundation to punish a man for standing in a room where others decided he did not belong." Cameras flashed. Board members whispered. The public reversal had begun, and it cost her exactly what courage was supposed to cost: comfort, image, obedience. Across the city, Jordan sat with Lila in the old blue pickup outside Granite Media, his suspension paper folded beside the gear shift. Lila had not cried until they reached the truck. Then she did, quietly, like she was trying not to make his hard day harder. Jordan buckled her in and wiped one tear from her cheek with his thumb. "You do not have to hold that in for me. They made you leave. They made a choice. Can Miss Rose fix it?" Jordan looked through the rain-streaked windshield. "Maybe. Do you want her to?" He did not answer fast. "I want the truth to stand without anybody buying a chair." His phone rang. Granite Media Human Resources. Jordan answered on speaker because Lila was watching. The HR manager's voice sounded different now. Smaller. "Mr. Blackwell, your suspension has been withdrawn, pending an external review. You may return to your regular shifts. Miss Whitaker's office has requested that no employee face retaliation related to invited Foundation attendance." Jordan listened without smiling. "Thank you for informing me. We apologize for the inconvenience." His eyes moved to Lila. It was more than inconvenience. The line went quiet. "Yes, sir." He ended the call. Lila looked at him, hopeful. "So you won." Jordan folded the suspension paper once and placed it in the glove box. "No, baby girl." The truth got a little room. Back at the Grand Meridian, Rose left the stage under a storm of whispers. In the service corridor, she finally called Jordan. He answered after the third ring. Neither spoke for a second. Then Rose said, "I did not stop it soon enough." Jordan's voice came calm through the phone, but not soft enough to pretend nothing had happened. "No, you did not." The honesty hurt. She accepted it. "Your job. Restored for now." "Good." "Miss Whitaker." The old formality returned, and with it, the boundary she knew she had not earned her way past. Fixing a wrong is not the same as being trusted after it. Rose closed her eyes. "I know." Through the phone, She heard Lila ask if that was Miss Rose. Jordan covered the speaker for a moment, then came back. Lila says thank you for making the sun stronger. Rose looked down at the empty corridor, at her reflection faint in the polished wall. Tell her, she whispered. I am still learning where the broken part is. Jordan did not answer right away. When he finally did, his voice carried neither forgiveness nor rejection, only dignity. Then learned slowly. She notices everything. The call ended, and Rose stood alone beneath the fluorescent light, understanding that the truth had been spoken in public, but the hardest part was still private. Tomorrow, she would have to face Jordan Blackwell without a microphone, without a screen, and without the power to make trust arrive before it was ready. The next afternoon, Jordan Blackwell returned to Granite Media through the service entrance with his maintenance card, his old toolbox, and Lila's drawing folder tucked safely beside her backpack. Nothing about him looked victorious. His uniform was clean. His shoes were worn. His hands moved with the same quiet care as always, tightening a loose handle on the supply room door before anyone asked. The building had embarrassed him, suspended him, restored him, and then gone back to pretending marble floors stayed polished by themselves. Jordan did not pretend. He worked. Lila sat on a low bench near the service hallway, finishing apple slices from her lunchbox while coloring the crooked sun she had repaired in darker yellow crayon. Daddy, she asked, is Miss Rose still sad? Jordan glanced toward the lobby doors. Maybe a little. Did she fix a mean thing? She told the truth. Is that fixing? He paused, then closed the toolbox latch. It is a start. A few minutes later, Rose Whitaker stepped into the service hallway, without cameras, without assistants, without the black SUV waiting at the curb like a command. She wore a simple gray coat, her hair tied back, her phone buried in her pocket. For once, she did not look like a woman arriving to own a room. She looked like someone asking permission to enter one. Lila saw her first. Miss Rose. Rose smiled, small and real. Soit fart. She stopped a few feet from Jordan, leaving the distance untouched. Mr. Blackwell. Jordan nodded. Miss Whitaker. The old formality hurt a little, but Rose accepted it. She had earned the distance. She looked at Lila's drawing. Your son looks stronger. Lila held it up proudly. Daddy said broken parts can learn new colors. Rose's eyes softened. Your daddy says useful things. He says slow things, Lila corrected. Jordan gave her a look. Baby girl. But true things. Rose almost laughed, then turned back to him. I spoke to my father this morning. Jordan did not reach for the moment, and he still wanted an answer. About the men he chose. About the life he chose. Her voice stayed steady, though her hands folded once inside her coat sleeves. I told him I would not marry a man because a board could explain him. I told him if I ever chose someone, it would be someone I respected in a room with no audience. Jordan's eyes held hers, careful and unreadable. And did you say my name? Yes. The hallway quieted around them. Even Lila stopped coloring. Rose took one breath. But I also told him your answer was not mine to give. I chose what I believe. I did not choose for you. That was the sentence that reached him. Not the courage in the ballroom. Not the public correction. This. The respect that did not try to own the person it admired. Jordan looked down at his hands, callous from work, steady from years of not letting fear drive. My life is not easy, Rose. It was the first time he said her name without correcting himself. I know I did not know it fully. There will be bills, asthma nights, long shifts, people looking before they understand. Then teach me how to stand there without making it about me. Jordan looked at her for a long moment. No ruse, no movie ending, no promise large enough to become dishonest. One step, he said. Rose nodded. One honest step. Lila slid from the bench and walked between them, holding out the drawing. 3 figures stood beneath the repaired sun. Jordan, Lila, Rose. No mansion, no ballroom, just a sidewalk, an old blue truck, and a yellow sky made stronger where it had been hurt. Jordan took the page carefully, then handed it back to Lila. Keep it safe. Lila slipped one hand into his and offered the other to Rose. Rose looked at Jordan first, waiting. He gave his smallest nod. Only then did she take it. Across town, Edward Whittaker sat alone in his study with the earlier drawing still on his desk. He had not apologized. He had not forgiven. Some men change slowly, if they change at all, but he did not throw it away. Outside Granite Media, the rain had stopped, and sunlight broke across the wet pavement in quiet pieces. Jordan did not raise his voice. He did not become rich enough for her world. He simply stayed decent long enough for someone raised around power to believe in people again.